Well, it's a new week, some joyous things happening, good things, and the 700 Club is here for you. Guess what? The world today runs on computers. I wish it weren't the case, but it does. I like just an old good old-fashioned pen and ink, but no way, it's got to be a computer. Everything from government to business to homes. But when these computers are hacked, it can lead to total chaos.
Well, investigators today are hunting for whoever launched a massive cyber attack over the weekend. It spread through 150 countries and could still be active today. But authorities believe they've finally gotten it under control. Heather Sells has the story.
It's an escalating threat with more than 200,000 victims around the world. And many of those victims are corporations, government agencies, and even hospitals.
This is an unprecedented scale. We've never seen something spread this quickly in a 24-hour period across these many different countries and continents.
The malware virus is known as WannaCry. It starts with a simple email.
So a user will receive an email, and that email will have a document attached to it. And the email will be what's called socially engineered. So it will name the person, it will give an impression that there is a really good reason why they should open that document. It's an invoice that they haven't paid. It's a lottery that they've won.
The virus has attacked companies like FedEx in the U.S. In China, close to 30,000 institutions have been affected. In the U.K., hospitals have been forced to delay surgeries and turn away patients.
I think it's a heinous crime, this hacking, because they're putting people's lives at risk.
We're aware that a number of NHS organisations have reported that they have suffered from a ransomware attack.
Experts say there's no political agenda behind the attacks. It's just old-fashioned blackmail. The virus assailants issue a ransom note to those crippled by their attack, pay $300 in the digital currency known as Bitcoin. Then hours later, they ask for $600, and then the message threatens to destroy files.
It may take us weeks or months, or we may never even find out who's behind this.
The virus is attacking a loophole in the widely used Microsoft Windows operating system that runs computers. But Microsoft is pointing the finger at U.S. intelligence, saying it has stockpiled software code that hackers can use and kept it secret, making it harder to update the software to protect it from attacks. The president has reportedly called for an emergency meeting today to assess the threat after issuing an executive order just last week on cybersecurity that has been praised in Congress. But there's a long way to go, as this latest cyber attack is believed to be the biggest online extortion attempt ever recorded. Heather Sells, CBN News.
Isn't that amazing what they do? You know, we've found at Regent Universities some stuff going on, but everything with private businesses and universities and charities, they're all subject. But the thing that they're hitting hospitals, I mean, that's just outrageous. I mean, people's lives are at stake. They're delaying crucial surgeries. These people are monsters. But it looks like some kid had got the solution. He'd spent a couple of dollars on the necessary ingredients to stop it, and he's been the firewall against all this. Well, all these huge agencies can't stop it. Well, the president has a full week ahead of him as he gets ready for his first major international trip, including finding a new FBI director. John Jessup has that.
That's right, Pat. President Trump says he may name a new director by the end of this week. Lawmakers are urging him to avoid picking a politician for the job. The advice comes as the FBI continues its investigation of Russia's meddling into last year's election and possible ties to the Trump campaign, although there's no evidence of that. It also comes after Trump's tweet last Friday regarding tapes of his and former director James Comey's conversations. Republican Senator Lindsey Graham says it's time to clear the air about whether the tapes exist.
The president needs to back off here and let the investigation go forward. We need to call Comey and get to the bottom of all this. And I think it's time for an FBI agent to lead the FBI.
The White House has neither confirmed nor denied the existence of any tapes. Well, North Korea's latest missile test this weekend could be another step toward building an international missile that can carry a heavy nuclear warhead. Pyongyang tested what's considered a medium long-range missile. Officials say it traveled almost 500 miles, landing 60 miles off the coast of eastern Russia.
It's the first time we've seen any military missile go this far, but we can be sure that the North Koreans are trying to make this missile nuclear capable.
North Korean leader Kim Jong-un promised more nuclear tests, and Pat, he added that the strikes could reach the U.S. mainland and in the Pacific.
Well, again, I want to issue the one warning that needs to be taken seriously, and that is an EMP blast from a small yield nuclear missile over someplace like Hawaii or over Chicago. It would paralyze us, and we must harden those electric nodes throughout our nation. It's not that expensive, but it must be done, and it must be done now. It's a crash program, because once it's done, I mean, and these connections are fried, it'll take sometimes months, maybe even years to get the stuff back working, and it could paralyze our entire economy. Well, John, what else have you got?
Well, Pat, while North Korea's nuclear and missile programs are in the headlines, the Hermit Kingdom is also hard at work on another way to attack the U.S. and other countries through cyber warfare. Eric Rosales brings us that story.
While North Korea dictator Kim Jong-un struggles to develop a long-range nuclear ballistic missile, his military is quietly developing a group of sophisticated cyber hackers who could potentially cripple key U.S. operations with a few mouse clicks.
Our policymakers, government leaders, even corporate leaders are not adequately recognizing risks that exist.
Cyber expert John Bambenik says our reliance on technology requires much greater security. He adds governments, including the U.S., often don't realize that need until major hacks take place, like hacks to government agencies. In 2015, the Pentagon admitted it found 30 million known malicious intrusions on Department of Defense networks. That's 30 million cyber attacks in just 10 months, or 100,000 attacks per day, every day. Despite North Korea first connecting to the World Wide Web in just 2010, the country is already known for developing teams of cyber attackers.
There are training camps and schools that identify talent when they're young and train them in this stuff. In terms of how to compromise networks and how to manipulate people and individuals to compromise their own security.
Bambenik says leaders start early, looking for kids with promise in areas like math, then putting those young prospects in elite schools. The children undergo rigorous computer training and eventually graduate into the military cyber operation unit. An August 2014 security briefing by Hewlett-Packard shows this force could be nearly 6,000 soldiers strong, with many masking activity by operating in foreign countries.
In North Korea, in addition to their warfare capabilities, and cyber is a big part of it, they are actually penetrating crime, because they can no longer afford, they've been so isolated by the international community, they're actually turning to cyber means to fund their day-to-day operations. And that's very different. So here you have state-sponsored crime.
Frank Salufo is with the Center for Cyber and Homeland Security at George Washington University. He told us a North Korean group known as Lazarus recently targeted 31 countries and ripped off $81 million in Bangladesh alone. In one well-known hack, the group Guardians of Peace hit Sony Pictures in 2014. That resulted in delaying the release of The Interview, a comedy which made fun of North Korea's leader and his assassination.
That's a game changer in some ways, where you worry about crime trying to influence the state. Here you have states actually trying to influence crime.
So what is this administration doing to stop it? A White House official told CBN News a fully functional cybersecurity team is in place. However, even they admit it's difficult to protect the hundreds of departments and agencies in the government. Cybersecurity experts agree.
We're never going to simply firewall our way out of this problem. We're never going to simply defend our way out of this problem.
What is the solution then?
To me, we need to continue to invest in our offensive capabilities to ultimately, if there's a missing dimension of our strategy in the cyber domain, it's we don't have a deterrent strategy.
In other words, serious consequences when cyber hackers do cross that Silicon line, because ultimately it's about stopping bad people from participating in bad activity. In Washington, D.C., Eric Rosales, CBN News.
Pat, huge vulnerabilities in the cyber domain.
You know, I agree with that expert, and I want to go beyond that. We have capability that far exceeds any nation on the face of the earth. The NSA is one of the most sophisticated agencies known to mankind. And it's time that we take some of the resources we have and turn it on North Korea. The idea that this little pipsqueak nation would keep us terrorized is just insane. We ought to shut down everything they've got and do it with cyber. We can shut down everything they're doing. We can close up their missile program and everything else instead of saying, well, are they going to hit us with a nuke and when is it going to happen? This is ridiculous. I mean, why don't we take the resources that are ours and, as the man said, use them as offensive weapons instead of just sitting back and waiting for them to hit us? And we can do it, and we can do the same thing with China. If China wants to misbehave, we can shut them down as well. We can disrupt the Russians. We have the capability of doing all this. We can also hack into any of them. We have enormous capability, and far and away more sophisticated than any nation on earth. And why should we sit back and in some bunker mentality and wait for them to hit us? No way. John?
Pat, the Trump administration is significantly expanding its global pro-life Mexico City policy. That policy forbids taxpayer money from going to organizations that provide or promote abortions overseas. In an exclusive report, a White House official tells CBN's David Brody that the administration will now apply the anti-abortion guidelines to a much larger share of U.S. international spending. In the past, the pro-life guidelines only covered about $600 million of international aid. Now they will apply to nearly $9 billion. So none of that additional money will be used for programs that provide and support abortions internationally. You can find David's report about that policy and what it means by going to cbnnews.com/The Brody File. Well, reaction has been mixed on a Justice Department memo to federal prosecutors telling them to seek the toughest charges possible for crimes. Attorney General Jeff Sessions says the order is necessary to fight violence in some major cities and the spread of drugs.
Trust our prosecutors in the field to make good judgments. They deserve to be unhandcuffed and not micromanaged from Washington. Rather, they must be permitted to apply the law to the facts of each investigation. Let's be clear. We are forcing the laws that Congress has passed. That is both our fundamental mission and our constitutional duty.
Arkansas Republican Senator Tom Cotton says it will cut down on crime, but former Attorney General Eric Holder says the move is unwise and ill-informed. And Republican Senator Rand Paul says mandatory minimums are unfair and disproportionately affect minorities. Pat, back to you.
We did a very important series called A Nation of Criminals, and we showed that the United States has more people incarcerated than any other nation on the face of the earth. It is unbelievable what's out there, especially on these minor drug offenses. The possession of a few ounces of marijuana, a few ounces of cocaine, gives somebody a 5 to 10 year sentence. It's just outrageous. And our jails are full. We can't afford it. And it's unproductive. And the idea of mandatory minimum, they said you got some 80-year-old grandmother and she gets a parking ticket and that's the third one she's got, so she's got to go to jail for the rest of her life. I mean, these things are insane. And the idea of making it tougher instead of changing it, we ought to take away those mandatory minimums and let judges have some discretion so that they can deal with cases as they arise. And what we must do is put in counseling. We must have some kind of, mechanism whereby victims are taken care of by the perpetrators instead of just automatically lock them up. What good does that do? And it's very, very expensive. So the idea, these people are, quote, tough on crime. That's nonsense. Our country is groaning under the weight of incarceration. And, we were farming it out to private businesses, and they were getting paid on the number of people they could get locked up and keep locked up. I mean, this is insane. And we just must do something to stop the incarceration of all these people. And for the Attorney General to say, well, let's enforce every law that Congress has made, dear me, Congress has gone overboard on this tough on crime stuff, and I agree with Senator Paul. It falls disproportionately on the minorities, on the poor, on the urban blacks, etc. And they're just not fair. And it's time something is done to change the laws. So Yes, if there are evil people in gangs doing terrible things, by all means, lock them up and throw away the key. In terms of human traffickers, I would execute them. I think they're just horrible what they do. But in terms of just these minor offenses and say, let's get tough on crime, no way.